Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the Midnight Mass finale. A great finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, first and foremost, we're immediately picking up after the events of the last episode, and the Chosen, or everyone that got turned is running amok in town. And we cut to, like I had brought up before, I always kind of felt bad for Mildred, but I was like, no, she's still alive and well, because, yeah, she had the blood in her system, so the moment she died, she came back, so she ended up going inside a church, and Pruitt was waiting. And it's actually really interesting when you break down, what he did. Obviously, he had the best of intentions. He actually talks about the fact is that, and I was wondering, I should have figured they would cover it, but I didn't know they'd bring it up in the facet of how they did. But it is confirming, yes, Sarah is his daughter, and it is a situation of she was already with someone else, and he's also a priest. Back then, that would have been a whole scandal. So them being together could have never been a thing. But it was interesting because he explains his main reason. I wanted to help everyone out, sure. But first and foremost, it's he wanted to make sure that Sarah and Mildred couldn't die. That was his first priority, making sure that they wouldn't die because he didn't want them to die. So, that's his main reason for coming back. And then it's helping the others, but those two took priority above anyone else. And so for him, it's all the miracles I could create, the greatest miracle I could is give us a second chance. I mean, imagine that being the greatest miracle, all having a second chance to be a family this time. But, for Mildred, she's even if we had the chance, it never could have worked out, because us making that decision, because he's if you had just come to me at any point in time and was hey, let's go, I would have put the priesthood behind me and gone. But the thing is, Mildred's then we would have ruined 4 lives. His, hers, Sarah's, as well as her dad, George's. So it's Sarah's quote-unquote dad, George. So, these decisions kind of born from, because for him, it's there was so much wasted time we could have had together. And both of us, we were at the end, and that, and that ends up playing into a really interesting thing that Annie was saying, right, it's despite everything, we believe there to be a heaven, but even then, even with all those beliefs, we still fight tooth and nail, and we beg, we scrap for just a few more minutes to be alive. It's that's the irony of the human condition, believing in an afterlife, but then everyone having that fear, no one wanting to die, and that comes full circle later on, but we'll get to it when we get to it. But the whole town is being ravaged. Everyone that was in that church, because I was immediately oh, whoever is in that, everyone in the church is going to kill whoever is in town. Everyone in town is going to be food, except Sturge ends up changing at least one person. So most people are just being fed on, because most of the people that weren't at the church haven't been getting communion, so they don't have the angel's blood inside of them. So it is purely there are people dead. The only guaranteed people that have come back and were vampires, because even you look at the crowd at the end, it's that's not a crowd of 127 people. That's everyone that was in the church, because they're the only ones that constantly went to get communion, and no one else out in the town. So everyone's just getting attacked. There's even that scene that's actually in the trailer, and now you have context for it. Everyone's running around, and you see Ed just walking with all the screaming around, because he's not taking part in it. And even at one point, Ollie's watching everything happen, and he stops, because it's something that Ed ends up talking about later on, where it's it doesn't change who you are at your core. Like I said, it probably amplifies a little bit of what was already there in many different facets. If you let that, you're hungry, but if you give into it, it doesn't change who you are at your heart. Yes, the hunger is a powerful thing, but as long as you don't give into it, as long as you keep up your resilience, it's hard to keep it up. But at the end of the day, it's not because she was thinking once it takes control of you, you become this monster but it's yes, the hunger is there, but you at your core don't change. And I think that's why Riley, because Riley said he wasn't strong, and that's why he did what he did, But that in itself plays into at the end of the day, it's what do we do now? There's no service, so we're cut off from the rest of the world. But it's what about the boats? But then Aaron's the one that's we can't. the fact of the matter is, this thing is like a contagion. If we let it go on the mainland, if one of them survives and makes it to the mainland, like, this will spread like crazy. So, Erin grabs a knife. She starts handing it out to people, getting everybody armed and weaponed up. And it's like, at the very least, they want to get the kids out of there. But it's like, right, we got to make sure we got to make our stand. And it's like, right, like, even if it's just for like maybe a few hours, maybe a few minutes, maybe even seconds, but at least we're going to fight to live that much longer just to try and see this through. So, you have Bev with Sturge showing up and trying to burn the house down. And obviously Annie's the one that's like, no, I'll go outside. And she sends Erin off with the kids and Sarah and Hassan. And so Annie comes outside, and I like that scene a lot, because it's like, it's not, Beverly in that moment doesn't get like her comeuppance, but it's like, she's like, I have to tell you something that someone should have told you for a long time. Beverly, you are not a good person. The fact is that it's kind of like, because she's like, oh, like, you're a murderer's son and stuff like that. And she's like, yes. But even then it's like, God loves my son. And it's like, and why does that bother you so much, Beverly? The fact is that, because when it comes to God, it isn't supposed to be like, oh, who he loves more. It's like, no, he's supposed to love us all equally. But for whatever reason, there's something broken in Beverly where she needs God to love her more. It's like the fact is, the knowing that my God loves my son as much as he loves you, it bothers you so much. You know, and that shows you like the flaw in her. Like, and just like, she does not appreciate anything that Annie's saying. And Annie kills herself. But obviously, like, it doesn't matter. Like, she's already got the blood in her system, and in that moment, like, Beverly and Sturge like start licking up the blood, because, like, you know. But watching it burn, Sturge is like, all right, we should put this out. But Beverly's like, no. And basically she's saying, like, this is revelations. Like, let's set fire to every house, because the fire in 84 that consumed everything on the island didn't consume the church. The church will be our ark in this new metaphor, the flood 2.0. It's like, that will be its arc, and, you know, we'll survive afterwards. So, like, there you're going around town burning down every home. And it's like, the fact is, like, which maybe there's also a level of irony behind that, because, like, Beverly's the one, once again, like, she's very selfish in what she does, because what did she do? She took all that money, like, and she's the one that convinced everyone to take that deal, like, you know, that they got, and that's why so many people moved away. But also, like, all that money ended up going, a lot of it, into the rec center, which it's this said arc that she's like saying it's standing for everyone. So I'm like, there's a lot of, like, tragic irony behind all of this, like, of just kind of like, in a way, like, it all has been leading to Beverly get her comeuppance, because she's so self-centered, she's so egotistical, thinking that she's right, that she's, like, so chosen above everyone else. She's not a good person, and it's like she's overcompensating, trying to be a good person, and by doing so, you couldn't just she had to, like, make herself seem self-right and better, because I think it's just like, because she wanted to be chosen, like, because even in this regard, like, remember, Riley was the first one next to Pruitt that got chosen. It's like, so that's probably also a little bit of the jealousy too, like, why was Riley chosen? Like, I'm your almost like your herald. I'm here for you, Pruitt. Like, I'm the one that's always believed in you. I've helped you. I made sure Joe's body was disposed of, and it's like she still got picked pretty much last, because she was the last one to turn, nearish the last to turn, but, like, she wasn't the first person. It was Riley, you know. So at the but like I said, they're going around burning everything down. I think it's also poetic that Lisa and Warren ended up at Joe's place and ended up getting the gun, and even then it's like, because that was the whole thing with Annie too. It's like, what's the point of that? Like, it's not going. Those things won't stay down. And once again, like brought up earlier with Aaron, it's like, what few minutes, you know? And Lisa says that again, and it's like, you know, they're gonna head for the boats and try to get off the island, even get some gas if there's anything left. And so Hassan, Sarah, and Aaron go down to get up all the gas they can, and they start burning the boats. You know, Sarah's like, I hope the kids got out. It's like, we will never know. But Sarah's like, you know what? No, I believe they got it. I know they did. So, and, you know, so they make their stand by burning down the boats. And so ultimately, when Sturge tells her that it's like, wait, the boats are, it doesn't matter. The mayor, he'll get the ferries to come back then, so it's like, it's fine, it'll all work out. It's the contingency plan of like, right, well, but it's like, I guess it's like, you could always get the cell phone service back up. I guess you could get the power lines back up in that regard. So, because I'm about to say, you kind of went through a lot to kind of screw yourselves over to having no escape. Now you're kind of like stuck on an island regardless. But Beverly's kind of like, no, it's fine. It's all going to work out. I think it's interesting that Howard, he ended up getting turned, and it turned out he killed his wife and his child or children, which I'm like, that's so interesting. Like, because once again, that's the actor who played Phil/Flesh in Van Helsing. His character in that kind of did a similar thing. And if you're unaware, Van Helsing was a vampire show. So it was like, I just thought that was interesting. But he talked about the fact that he killed his child and his wife because everyone outside of that, like, most of the people that got turned to didn't know the circumstances of how this worked. Like, all they had to do was like, before this person's died, give them some blood and they'll come back. Sturge is like probably the only one who knows if Dolly or Wade did it, because essentially Beverly was like, the fact of the matter is you're only supposed to do it with like a select few, but he kind of did it with everyone. And now it's like, right, the fact is that this happened to you, Howard, is just because you weren't chosen. The fact is that what was it? It was basically like, you had been showing up, and because you didn't show up, you didn't know. And it's like, but even the people there didn't really know, because if so, the numbers would be greater than what it is. Like, but maybe they were taking Beverly's advice of like not like changing every single person. But it's like, it's because she was trying to say like, because they didn't show up, they're like, it's okay for them to die because they were sinners or whatever. And it's like, right, you did what you did because you didn't know, because you didn't show up. So I'm sorry, Howard, you gotta go. Because she's the one taking over things now, because after like she's burning the town down, like, oh, like, Pruitt, come see all this, and she's showcasing it, and he's like, we were wrong, I was wrong, that this isn't the way things should have been. Like, because for him, it's like, because she's like, no, you have to be the leader. And he was like, that in itself is the problem. Like, the fact of the matter is, you shouldn't be listening to me. You shouldn't be following me. Like, the only person, like, the only, like, all encompassing is God. And it's like, that got lost along the way, because Beverly became so obsessed with, like, it no longer became about, what God's doing through Pruitt. It's just she followed him, like, being the shepherd and his flock. But he was like, no, like, it was supposed to be about God. It's like, right, you open the door, like, you set all this pandemonium in action. And so for her, it's like, right, you're my final test. It's like, right, like, she's essentially taking the mantle of things now, like, fine, I will lead these people into the new age, essentially. But you have different things. You had Sarah inside setting down the gas, and then Pruitt comes inside because he was saying, like, right, if you want to come into the church accepts all, this is what this place has always been. But when he sees Sarah doing what she's doing, he's like, it's good. He's like, I wish me and your mom could have told you the truth. He's like, I would have liked, us to have gotten to get to know each other. And Sarah's like, me too. But Sturge shoots her. And at the end, they're both there for her. And he tries to feed her the blood, but she spits out because she refuses to, like, become that. It's like, no, like, this has to end here. This has to end on Crockett Island, and she won't come back. It's like, both of them, it's like, one of the reasons he did this was for her sake, and now it's like, she's dying. She's gone now because of it, And he, at the end of the day, the sad thing is he has no one to blame but himself, because he set this all in motion. And so, at the same time, Hassan was trying to burn down the rec center, and obviously Beverly's calling him a viper, and it's like, calling him a terrorist and stuff like that. And it's just kind of, it's like, right, it just brought out what was always there. Like, it's like, okay, bring out, like, your disgusting racism and stuff. Like, notice no one else in that crowd was talking like that except for Beverly, and even when he was kind of calling her out later on, because it was basically, I forgot the line he said, but it was basically kind of like, right, like, God basically strikes both, like, it was like, he shines the sun on good and evil, or something like that, and he's kind of laughing as she shoots him again, because, because at the end of the day, Ali ended up choosing his dad, because he wasn't all about this. Like, he came to his senses enough, and he set fire to the facility, the rec center, And that's the last haven, because Beverly was so adamant about like destroying every other place that this was going to be their ark. Never crossed her mind that the ark itself would get destroyed. So she put all her eggs in one basket and is like, no, there has to be somewhere else to hide. It's like, no, you literally burned everything else down. And at that point, like, everyone starts walking away because there's nothing left, you know? There was even that moment with Sturge when he comes across Ochre. He's like, are you okay, kid? And he was like, I think I killed my mom. He's like, I've done some stuff I've done some stuff. And he's just like, can you forgive me, kid? And Ochre's like, I forgive you. And it's like, right, in that moment of just like, right, we all did some terrible stuff tonight. We all got consumed. We let this, devil essentially lead us astray, and it's like, or, once again, it's like, it still was never like classified as a vampire. It was always like, you even read the subtitles, it's like the angel, like that's what it gets labeled as, because that's what it is. But I'm like, that's why I'm like, is it actually like, that's what I'm wondering, is it supposed to be like this, like it legitimately isn't considered a vampire, it is just straight up, it is an angel, and wrought chaos to this island. Because earlier, Lisa and Warren, obviously we go in there and we find Bill, his body, and it's like, along with like other dead rats, because this was like the main place this thing was hiding, feeding off of Bill. And it's like, yeah, Bill didn't come back because he didn't never get communion. Makes sense, because he was kind of like a little bit of an outcast. He was a criminal, so yeah, this thing is so focused on eating that lady that it doesn't even, like, Lisa shoots it and it just kind of like shrugs it off as someone like, stop it, you're being annoying. Even to the point they set it on fire, it still flies away, even to the point it gets Aaron later on. But the thing is so focused on eating that it doesn't, like, it's like she's there, like, just slowly, like, slicing into its wings, making sure that it can't fly too far away. And even when it pulls away to notice, like, Aaron grabs its head and pulls it back in, because it's like, no, focus on me, and just kept cutting and cutting its wings. And then we see it kind of like flying and kind of limping in the air. It's just kind of like, yeah. And because obviously as the city was burning, like, Lisa and Warren had gotten away there near the shore, and Lisa's like, my parents, like, everyone, like, please, like, give them peace. And even, Warren being like, my mom, my dad, even my brother, they're gone, aren't they? He's like, if I'd known this, I would have, it's that always that last thing of like, you never know when the last time you're going to meet the people you care about, when the last time you're going to be around them. And so, he's like, I would have done things differently, but, and him and Lisa get on the boat and leave, and I was just like, man, like I was like, I knew this was going to have a depressing ass ending, and it sure as hell does. Ali's like dragging his dad away. He's wounded, and they go to the shore and they pray, their prayers at the very end, like I said, everyone else is just scattered away, because Pruitt and Mildred took Sarah's body to the little bridge that she really liked as a little girl, and that be kind of the place like her body is left. And Sturge, Howie, and Ochre, decide to kind of walk, because, go see, I guess, because, like, there's nowhere else to hide. And at the end of it, I think it's, once again, the biggest, well, before we even get to, like, the full-blown comeuppance, because, like, Lisa and Warren are watching, and they're like, the thing's, like, flying away. Do you think it's trying to escape from the sunlight? Do you think you'll make it? And Warren's like, I don't think it can. I mean, it's 30 miles to, like, shore, so, like, I don't see that happening. Still a possibility that could have happened, but it's like, plus in the state that it's in, I don't see that being a possibility. So, but as she's laying there, Aaron, thinks back to, like, maybe it's just in that moment of, like, imagination meets memory, but she's there with Riley, and it's like, he's like, what do you think, where do you think what happens when you die? And for her, she's like, right, myself? She's like, right, that in itself is the problem. Like, it's all about, like, you're so focused on, like, the self, and, like, what is that? There is, like, no self in the grand scheme of things, because kind of along the lines of what Riley was bringing up, but the fact is what we represent. We are, before we're even our memories and our personalities, we already came into existence because of all the little atoms that make us up, like, come into being, like, because we are all connected in the grand scheme of things, kind of like, almost like the life stream from Final Fantasy VII. It's like, we are all this, like, that, the amalgamation of everything, that basically life is like a dream that we keep, like, dreaming and dreaming and dreaming again and again and again. That's what life is. that, even at the end, like, her brain is kind of like, her neurons are the lightning bolts of her brain, the neurons are firing. And it was like, I'm going to butcher all that it was, but there was like a lot of interesting perspective and nuance to it that I'm not going to like be able to like properly regurgitate, I guess. I'm going to end up paraphrasing it and butchering it. So, but it was beautiful, and like legitimately, like there, like I said, there is some like sad beauty to it, and so that, like, I was starting to actually tear up, and then the scene of like everyone gathered around, like Ed and Annie, and then them proceeding to sing, and everyone gathered around, and in that moment, I was like, and you see Beverly walking to the shore, and she sees Ali and Hassan praying, and it's like at the very end, where is she? Right there alone. Everyone else on the island that's left has someone. They're with someone. They're together. Like everyone else in town. Pruitt and Sarah are together. I mean, Pruitt and Mildred are there with Sarah's body, and it's like, he's like, forgive me, and they kiss, and it's just like at the end you see like Beverly like desperately digging, trying to like, it's like, right, at that very end, she's scared, like she set this all in motion. Her arrogance brought this all into fruition, and like, once again at that very end, scared of dying, thought you were so right, and it amounted to nothing at the end, because here you are about to die, and she's scared, all that she brought, once again, like it's satisfying enough to like, once again, knowing that she's alone at the end, but it's like, at the end of the day, it's kind of that thing of like, it's like you, my mom, my dad, what Aaron was saying is just kind of like, we're all part of something like more, like we aren't just like ourselves, we're all the pieces that make us up, we're all part of something larger, and that in itself is God. Like I said, I'm butchering it, but I thought, like I said, it kind of borderline on some of the stuff that Riley was getting into, not really, but it's like, there was a beautifulness to it, and Erin's being there with him and just staring up at the sky as she's dying, and but also like in that moment being with him, like whether that's just like flashes of her brain, whatever the case may be, and everyone's singing together, and then like there's like I said, like the entire scene of them all together singing, and like I legitimately started to well up a little bit, and then like as the sun rises, they're singing, halts. Eerily, just like everyone stops at once, because notice like the person you get to see like burn in agony, you don't get it with anyone else except for Beverly, because like in that moment, like it's everyone's sad but no one's afraid because they're in this together, and it's like, because in that moment everyone's together, like Beverly's the only one alone, so she's screaming out in pain. Ali's like beside his dad because his dad just died during their prayers, and he's just touching his dad's body, and they fade away, turn to dust. Like I said, just that eerie, like all the singing stops at once. I was curious how they were going to handle that, and it's like, yep, just all at once it stops. But on the boat, Lisa and Warren are there, and Lisa's like they feel the ash falling down from the island, like onto the boat and from the sky, and in that moment, Lisa's like, I can't feel my legs, and she kind of smiles because it's like, right, the blood's worked its way out. It's, well, either it's like fully it's like flushed out of her system, because who knows how long it's been since her last communion, but also it could just be like, once again, the sun like on her body for an extended period of time is burning up the blood. So it's like, or once again, it could just be like, now that I think it's just, I don't think it's like werewolf rules of like what I was bringing up before of like, maybe some vampire rules, but definitely more so werewolf rules. If you kill the main beast, like all of it's going, it's like, no, which is sad. Like I said, like everyone dies except for them, which is like, I always think that's so heartbreaking when like, oh, like, only like one or two people survive in like a horror situation. And just coming from someone who doesn't watch a lot of horror movies, but it's like, I always think that's like the saddest thing, because it's like, right, their entire world got flipped up. So like, they're all that's left. It's like, what do you do when you get to the mainland? How do you explain it? Like, where do you go from here? Like, with all that they've lost, it's like, that's a bummer ass ending. Like, they stopped it from happening, but it's like the entire island's just burning and just everyone's dead. It's just like, that is one depressing ass ending, and I figured it was going to be that. And it is still that thing of like, you kind of am curious about the aftermath, but it's one of those endings of just kind of like, yeah, you can definitely tell that being what it is. It's like, this is what it is. This is the end of the story. This is the story we wanted to tell. So it is a limited series, which limited series could always end up. It just depends on whether the person decides they want to do more or not, or whether something gets picked up. But this definitely feels like, because if they did another season of this, it'd probably be like a limited series. It'd probably be like the haunting situation where it's like the haunting of Hill House, and then there's the haunting of Bly Manor, like a little bit of a separate like series entirely. If they went down that route, but as it stands, I don't see them doing it, especially because that thing probably died. Like, the fact is, you just have to infer a lot from the ending just to kind of assume, like, with its wings being the way it is, there's no way. I mean, it seemed like it might have, I mean, who's to say it's the only one? Maybe there's another one. Like, there's always another story that could be crafted in this universe in particular, but, like, I see it just being like, this is the story. You can think about what you want afterwards of like, well, what's going to be the aftermath? How is Lisa and Warren going to explain? That's kind of up to you to kind of ultimately decide. But like I said, I don't think there's going to be another season, but I'll really quickly look it up. From what I'm reading online, it seems like the general consensus is if there's going to be a season 2, it's super unlikely, which this is one of those instances of like, hey, if you decide you want to do a season 2, I'm fine with that. But majority of me is just kind of like, I'm fine with it being what it is. Yes, it's a uber depressing ending, but you told the story you were going to tell and it was really interesting. So if you decided not to do any more of it, I mean, it's one of those interesting things, kind of like spoilers, like season 1 of Preacher, where like 90% of like not only the main protagonist but like most of the characters you kind of got associated with, like 90% of like the entire town dies at the end of season 1 of Preacher. So like you only follow like 3 characters. So once again, you could always do an anthology thing of just following a completely separate story. But I just feel like with the nature of just everyone being dead, like and except for Warren and Lisa, it's just kind of like just end it there. Just let it be that. And like I said, you can always speculate and theorize about like what potentially could be the aftermath. You know, maybe Mike Flanagan at some point will be like, okay, this is what ended up happening. Like an after like epilogue of sorts of just kind of the aftermath of everything. Probably not. Probably just going to be like, oh, the ending is what it is. I'm not going to tell you what happens beyond. You can make up your own ending beyond that. I've told the story I want to tell. This is it. That's it. End all be all. So regardless, a crazy ass series. It's been a wild and interesting ride. Like I said at the beginning, it started off a little slow, but I really liked the direction and pacing and just like how everything's kind of played out. But yeah, quite a few developments and surprises. Oh, really quickly, I brought it up a couple episodes back, like about like, oh yeah, there was an actor I know that said like, oh, their reaction to like filming their final scenes. The person was the actress who plays Erin. That's what I was referencing. So, like I said, I didn't watch the video, still have it. I was just like I said, it just popped up in my subscription feed. And, you know, and once again, no spoilers or anything. It was just like, that's what kind of led me to think like, oh, things weren't going to end well for Erin. But, you know, that was, like I said, the title was like super ambiguous. It's just like, oh, like, it's just the emotions of filming that final scene. And then in the context of like, which is also weird to think about because like a lot of stuff is filmed out of order too. So what was her final scene actually? Because like her final scene in the show might not have actually been her final scene because like once again they film stuff like all over the place in movies and TV shows. But regardless, this is because I'd heard nothing but good things about the haunting of the haunting of Hill House and Bly Manor, but I just never like checked them out, and I really dug this show, so like I'm probably going to be even more inclined to finally check them out. Plus, I need to watch more like supernatural like horror stuff. I don't know if I'd call this necessarily horror based. I guess it's like it's not like scary horror. I guess there's like horror elements to it. Horror elements, I guess that's what I say, but like yeah, I'm probably more inclined to probably go back and watch both Bly Manor and Hill House now. Like I said, I was always interested. I just never took the time out to do that. But you know, I wish everyone the best in any future projects. Like I said, I don't think there's going to be another season of this, but you never know what next Mike Flanagan project might be. I'm interested to check it out, like what he ends up deciding to do. But yeah, like cast and crew, wishing the best of luck on their future endeavors, whatever that may be, whether it's another Mike Flanagan project or something else entirely. But that's really all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.